It's 4:30 and I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation. And a notice to attendees that the meeting is being held, the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino YouTube channel. A notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment and question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. To register, participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. And through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'd like to move that to section 11(1) of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229, 2016. The temporary facility provided for the public to watch and hear the August 6th, 2024 regular meeting is to be held in the multi-purpose room at the Tofino Community Hall, located at 351 Arnott Road in Tofino, BC, and that the meeting is to be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted via the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. And if there are no objections, through unanimous consent, I'd also like to move that the August 6th, 2024 regular council agenda be adopted. And moving on to the consent agenda, if there are no objections, I'd also like to move that the minutes of the regular council meeting held July 23rd, 2024 be adopted. And then moving on to public comment on agenda items. Are there any?
Thank you, Chair Sloman. We do have a few people signed up for comments. Before I call them to the podium, I will now make a call to the public for comments. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to make a comment, you can do so now using the Q&A function. You will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a call, calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times. All right. So Shannon Brown, if you'd like to come up to the podium. Then. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. I believe I'm here to talk about support for the Multiplex Centre. Recently we met with the Minister of Tourism, and she came out and when we talked to her about the idea of not just the multiplex centre, but tying in potentially a sports performance centre, which for my purposes or my dreams would act as a high performance surfing centre. She was really excited about the idea. I'm not sure exactly what the council needs to hear, but I see this as a really huge thing for the local community. Especially for the local surfers. There's so many kids that are growing up in the area and taking to surfing, but it's really limited here. We're so far away from the major surfing hubs that to have a future in competitive surfing, kids have to travel really far to have access to the competitions or the training facilities that they really need to excel to a level where they can compete against others on the world stage. So all of a sudden we have a chance to tie in something that would benefit them hugely and give so many kids something, some kind of future in their sport that is a sport for life kind of sport. And it feels like such an exciting time to think about this. I personally just got back from Tahiti for the Paris Olympics. I was there with Sanoa Olin, who's such an incredible story. Grew up, just on Cox Bay up the road from here, and with obviously tons of support from the community, and having had access to being able to travel and compete, she's gotten to the level where she's qualified for the Olympics. She's on the doorstep of qualifying for the Challenger Series, potentially onto the World Tour, and she's done all that without having access to the types of facilities that we're talking about. And I think
I think you've used your 2 minutes is just about up.
Again, that's an incredible story. I'd love to see that story repeat itself. There's so many kids coming up that have potential to get to her level, and if we can help that along and foster that talent, it would be amazing. So I really hope that the council gets behind this, writes that letter of support, and you know, thank you.
Jeremy Wallace.
Hi there, Jeremy Wallace, resident of Tofino with my family for the last 6 years, 5 of those accidental but wonderful. 2 teenage daughters, one of them just absolutely loves surfing. You've probably seen her as part of the e-bike Grom squad going up and down the multi-use path. It's had the opportunity in the community to work with Shannon and the rest of the locals here to surf and really advance her surfing, which has been fantastic. When I think about the opportunity for a high performance surf center here and just a high performance center in general, I think there is tremendous opportunity. My wife and I came from a sport background. My wife competed in the Olympic Games for sailing in 2000. I coached the team in sailing to the 96 Olympics. So we both have personally seen the impact that a sports center and a national sports center can have on development of athletes and development of the younger athletes in a community. And so when we're thinking about the opportunities that present themselves in Tofino, I mean, surfing is definitely a core activity. And it's just a wonderful place to be able to help advance athletes and younger athletes in Canada. And so I'd ask that council support a high performance surf center in Tofino. Thank you.
And Samantha.
Thanks so much for having me again, 2 meetings in a row. I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that have been said, and really the tie-in, one of the questions that had come from the meeting a couple or the last meeting was about the accessibility of this high performance aspect of the multiplex being accessible for all. And I really wanted to reiterate the interesting part of calling it a high performance surf center is really just for the attention of it, to make it a national and international facility, but it really is about accessibility for all ages, all sports, and really just bringing that attention in, especially for us economically, also the off season, and really diversifying our community in the sport world. It's already a place that athletes are coming to train. They are already Lululemon, Red Bull, they bring athletes here of all sports. And so to be able to bring them into a facility that has some attention and that we can really make those athletes then connect with our community would be something really inspiring for all ages and just benefit our community in general. The multiplex has been doing that with lots of athletes over the years, and we really see the impact that it has, especially for youth. Interestingly, with the strategic plan that was released today from the District of Tofino, and it was really exciting. We were at the District of Tla-o-qui-aht last week, which they motioned to send a letter of support for this idea. And the tie-in to prioritize establishment of community recreation facilities which serve the District of Tofino. The objectives are, starting out, well, this is something the multiplex and even the high performance surf center, although that's a new idea, that we're way down the road, talking about a business case and feasibility study, because we are years past all of those things. This is something that, we can really get on board and get in a very short amount of time, as opposed to starting from scratch and having to look at something that's 10 plus years.
I'm sorry, that's 2 minutes. Did you need a bit more time?
If that's possible.
You can, if you'd like, Chair Sloman, you can allow Samantha to speak for.
Okay, you can go for another
the longer.
Great. And then the other interesting tie-in is so it's the last 3 goals from the strategic plan that I think really relate well to combine efforts and collaborate with community partners in order to advance common goals and objectives. This is also, of course, a great example of that for our 8 communities working together. And then the last one is that you have is to develop the effective relationship with provincial and federal governments, which of course this project already has those relationships and very strong tie-in. So I think it's just something that's very timely to be able to have the conversation with Minister Popham, as Shannon said, our Minister of Tourism and Sport, and really be able to tie all of these pieces together for the community and really the future for everyone. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's no one else signed up for comments.
Okay. Okay. Then we're moving on to correspondences. We have 2 items of correspondence. Did council have any comments on the correspondence from the Minister of Housing? No? No, and then we have the West Coast Multiplex Society. Does council have any questions on that or comments?
Yes, thank you,
Councillor
Chair. Yeah, thank you for the delegation, not delegation, but from the comments from the and I just wanted to extend a congratulations to Coach Brown. He's been not only involved in the Olympics, as we all know, but has been supporting youth, and my son was a benefit of that as well. So I just really wanted to thank him for the work he's been doing for years. This is just not a one-off, and obviously the support for the center is multifaceted, and I think the letter that has been sent from the West Coast Multiplex requesting a letter of support. And I just had one question, and if it's okay through the chair to address. The letter of support would be, the support is going to be to addressing funders potentially in terms of that support. Thank you. That I think the nod of head was supportive of that. So I don't know if there was any other questions. Mayor Law. Oh, he's got a hand.
Councillor Sawyer had her hand up. Did you?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. My question was also for clarification on that, given that during our last meeting when we received your guys' delegation, and it was great when we discussed all the benefits of the surf center. And I believe Mayor Law was chairing that meeting, and he indicated that we all agreed it was a great idea, but before providing support or indicating support financially, we would want to speak to our partners or partners in the multiplex who would be also involved in those decisions. So I think though that may, Mayor Law?
Mayor Law, do you have?
Any comments on that?
You can go ahead and I can make a comment, couple comments. Sure.
Okay, yeah, no, that was just where I'm at. I think, yeah, I think it's a great idea. I don't think there's any disagreement there. I just think that there's a lot of voices at the table that I want to hear from personally before providing any concrete support.
Hey, Councillor McMaster.
Well, having spent the past 2 weeks watching the Olympics, it's one thing that stands out is that these athletes go to the best training facilities and coaches around the world. So by setting up a performance center, could Tofino be one of those places? Maybe, but I'm not a surfer. I have no idea what's involved in a high performance center. I have no idea of the cost, what it's going to cost. So I'd like to see that before I would. I mean, the notion is great, but I can't fully support it until I know sort of the nuts and bolts of what a surf center costs and involves.
Thank you. Mayor Law, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, just a couple comments. First of all, I want to say congratulations to Shannon Brown and the whole team, and congratulations to Sanoa. It's just tremendous to see the community come out and support her in the Village Green, and it was just a fantastic to see her there and put her all into those waves. I guess the second thing I'd want to say is, I see that Q&amp has agreed to offer a letter of support to this crew to go to the provincial government and try to get some forward motion on a surf center. And I can get behind that. I think we still have to talk about regionally. We have a lot to talk about the multiplex idea. But I think at this point, I mean, my opinion on this is I wouldn't have a problem giving a letter of support for them to pursue the idea of a high performance surf center noting that the region still has to hammer out, the multiplex and all that entails. But I do kind of feel like time is of the essence. So that's my one quandary. I feel like, maybe now is the time to put some effort in and see what the province comes back with. I mean, and see what the rest of the regional voices say about this as well, and then get into the room and start talking about the multiplex in the political realm locally and at the provincial and federal level. So that's my 2 bits.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I would just echo some of what Mayor Law is saying, where I could fully get behind the aspect of adding on the High Performance Search Center and support that as a concept, but I wouldn't want our support letter to be misconstrued as full and complete support for the multiplex without consultation with some of our other partners who'd be involved, or without an understanding of the financial aspects of what we would be committing ourselves to. I think this is a great idea to explore and would be a great addition to the project. I just think we need to explore the larger concept as well as this is going on.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think their letter, it's pretty clear that they're looking for support for the concept of the search center. At this point, I think the full support for the multiplex is not really, we're not at that stage yet, and I think that support will come in consultation with other regional partners, but also in stages of support, and as we know more about costs. So I have no problem supporting at this point the concept, giving the Multiplex Society the leeway to go and explore it and look for funding.
Okay. So I think I'll just ask you, who is in support of the concept of this letter of the?
Yeah, it says we're writing
So you,
formally request letter of support from Mayor and Council for the High Performance Search Center concept. Part of the multiplex.
okay, so.
Yeah.
So you're in support of that?
I am in support of their request.
Okay, who is in support? Okay, so would you need a motion to? Okay,
Maybe I'll turn that into a motion.
sure, that'd be great.
Okay, move that staff be authorized to provide a letter of support for the request from the Multiplex Society. And I'll just leave it at that because the request is written out. So I think that's clear enough. Yeah.
Do we have a second? Second, Councillor Steer. All in favor? Okay. Moving on to presentations and reports. We have a presentation from Mr. Rogers.
No presentation.
No presentation? Okay. Did council have any comments on this? No? Any questions on it?
No, I'll move the recommendation.
Yeah.
I move that the report titled zoning bylaw overview dated July 23, 2024 be received for information as corrected.
Seconded by Councillor Steer. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, and then do we have a presentation from Alex Slatter?
Chair Sloman, if you wouldn't mind just reading out the agenda numbers and.
Okay,
the names
sure.
of the
Agenda-
reports, just for the public,
Agenda number 10.2.
and just the name of the report.
The intern update on the housing incentive and accessory dwelling unit enhancement programs. Report from the community service.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. As the name suggests, I'm going to provide an update on the work that has already commenced on the Housing Accelerator Fund since the spring of this year. The intent is really just to provide an update for information purposes and enable council to provide general feedback. And I want to note that following this meeting, additional refinement and development of the initiatives described in this presentation will still occur.
That side button, is that on?
Perfect. So provide that overview. I think this is one of the first housing accelerator fund related progress updates since this funding in March of this year. So I just wanted to provide a brief refresher on what the Housing Accelerator Fund program is and proposed action plan from the district. So the HAF, as I like to call it, is a federal fund administered by CMHC, which is designed to accelerate the development of priority forms of residential housing across the country over a 3-year time frame. In January of 2024, the district signed a contribution agreement with CMHC to implement a 5-initiative action plan, which was introduced at the August 28th Committee of the Whole meeting, which was intended to incentivize the development of 34 additional dwelling units over 3 years, above and beyond the district's previous 5-year average. The grant total is $1.48 million and is intended to be distributed in 4 equal installments of about $370,000 over 3 years. And each successive installment is received only if the district can demonstrate it's making progress on implementing its action plan. And the way that is measured is they take stock of how many building permits have been issued towards the targeted number of units committed to in the action plan. So as a quick refresher, the district's action plan consists of the 5 initiatives listed here, which were designed to work together and will ultimately be implemented through a variety of policies and bylaws to make it easier to develop specific forms of housing within the district. So district staff have begun implementing all 5 of the initiatives, and they're at varying stages of completion today. The focus of today's presentation is specifically on initiatives 2 and 4 highlighted there, which is launch a housing incentive program, what we call the HIP, and increase the supply of accessory dwelling units, which we call the ADU program. Just generally, when describing the objectives of each of these programs, when it comes to the HIP, the intent is to develop a suite of tools to reduce the cost of developing desired forms of housing, which in this case are purpose-built affordable and market rentals, along with multifamily dwellings. And for the ADU initiative, the objective is to increase the availability of rental supply within the boundaries of the downtown area by facilitating additional detached accessory dwelling units in single-family zones. So a little more on that. Currently, our low density zones allow for a maximum of 2 dwelling units, and this initiative would facilitate the ability to develop a 3rd dwelling unit on low density zones in the downtown area in the form of an ADU, or what we call a caretaker's cottage. So in April of 2024, the district hired Wiser Projects, who is a consultant, to implement these 2 programs. And because both initiatives complement each other, we thought it was a natural fit for the consultant to take on both of these initiatives. To inform the details of each program, Wiser engaged staff multiple times, members of the development community, including builders, architects, and developers and designers, As well as we implemented a survey that was issued to downtown property owners to better understand barriers to development and inform preliminary recommendations, including appropriate amounts and mechanisms for financial incentives that are included as part of the program. And one thing that I just want to make clear is the timing of the approach and development of these initiatives is strongly tied to the deadlines that we committed to in the contribution agreement or the funding agreement with CMHC, which need to be implemented basically by the end of this year or early 2025. So to provide an overview of the preliminary recommendations for the housing incentive program, based on initial research and stakeholder feedback, the preliminary recommendations by Wiser on the scope of the program include four main types. So firstly, amending the zoning bylaw to enable greater development flexibility on single-family lots in the downtown area by allowing up to 4 dwelling units in flexible small-scale configuration. So things like additional secondary suites, ADUs, potentially fourplexes. Additionally, enabling smaller minimum lot sizes. So for example, reducing the minimum lot size of the R1 zone from 660 square meters to something 400 square meters, and reducing front and rear setbacks really to enable greater flexibility and for lot coverage. And finally, amending the zoning bylaw would address uncertainty and process length concerns that were ultimately raised by developers during the engagement process. The second key recommendation involves enhancing existing financial incentives that the district currently has, which would apply to purpose-built market rental dwellings. So currently the district has a variety of financial tools to reduce costs for below market dwellings through things like property tax and DCC waivers, though these same incentives don't exist for purpose-built market rentals specifically. So the half funding would be used to offset any of these proposed financial incentives up to a maximum amount and last for the duration of the program. And these specific amounts are still being worked out. The third and fourth recommendations are closely related and address concerns raised by the development community that permitting and servicing requirements are unclear, leading to uncertainty and increased development timelines and costs. And I'll note that the district is already implementing aspects of these recommendations that also came out of last year's development approvals procedures review, bylaw review. And these include the implementation of a digital permitting system, which we're currently doing with a piece of software called PSD Citywide, and the requirement to hold pre-application meetings for development applications, which is written to our most recent DAO bylaw. When it comes to preliminary recommendations developed by Wiser on the scope of the ADU enhancement program, these also include 4 key components. Similar to the first recommendation of the HIP program, the zoning bylaw would need to be amended to enable detached accessory dwelling units. And based on feedback from the development community, increasing the number of stories of accessory dwelling units from 2 to potentially 3, addressing the increasing the maximum floor area and reducing the minimum setbacks would increase the financial viability of building accessory dwelling units. The second recommendation relates to making new development permissions and processes easy to navigate by creating clear, publicly facing guides. There are some examples that we could draw upon from other municipalities that could easily be public facing on our website or available at our office. The third component includes providing financial incentives to property owners, either in the form of grants, loans, or tax waivers to building detached ADUs. And this is largely based on feedback from the landowner survey that was conducted, which included several questions identifying what the most suitable dollar amount would be to really move the needle on incentivizing people to build additional accessory dwelling units. survey results sort of indicated a ballpark of between $30,000 to $50,000 would be something that would move that needle. More discussion will need to occur with the district's finance department to narrow down the most appropriate incentive mechanism and amount, knowing that the total amount of incentives that this district can provide are finite and are dependent on the total amount that have funds. And the final recommendation is to adopt pre-approved building plans, which are currently being prepared by the province, which is intended to speed up development with timeframes. And these building plans are related specifically to accessory dwelling units. Originally, the district contemplated hiring a professional to develop their own ADU building plans. But given the province is near completion of a very similar initiative, it was Weiser's recommendation to avoid possible duplication of efforts and adopted the provincial plans when they are finalized, which is anticipated to come later this year. So next steps and considerations. As mentioned, after this meeting, staff will continue to work with Weiser to refine the recommendations and move forward with developing required policies and zoning bylaw amendments. Any additional policies or proposed zoning bylaw amendments would be subject to council approval and require additional analysis of things like potential servicing implications, along with consideration of concurrent district initiatives, including things like the broader zoning bylaw review that's happening and the development of policy. That's basically all I have for the update, and that brings me to the resolution, which is related to the acceptance of this report for information. If you have any comments that or questions that
Thank you. So there will be some questions. Okay, let's start with Councilor McMaster.
Can you remind me or tell me why this program's restricted to the downtown area?
Yeah, so I think that really stems from the intent of the official community plan, which has fairly strong policy intended to guide any future density to within the village containment boundary, which effectively the area really more industrial way that moves towards the downtown area. So any of these proposed zoning bylaw amendments to facilitate additional dwelling units and detached ADUs should be aligned with the OCP, especially to avoid any additional OCP.
Okay.
Councilor Anderson.
Yeah, I'm wondering, the downtown area has development permit areas, and would those remain in place and sort of go through the design review panel and stuff like that? Or are we looking at changing the development permit areas to that sort of guidelines kind of format to sort of speed up development? And I'll just background my question a little bit. There's been a lot of effort over the years to sort of preserve the form and character and some of the historic qualities of the downtown. And if we start putting in pre-designed things or tearing down some of what we call historic buildings in Tofino and putting up fourplexes, it's going to change the character. So I'm just wondering, to what extent are we moving in a direction that will fly in the face of some of those kind of planning objectives we've had for the downtown?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you for it. Just to clarify, the scope of the proposed bylaw amendments would be just to amend permissions to existing zones. Zones like the R1 over density zones within the downtown area. This would not impact any existing development permit areas. I can't remember off the top of my head this the scope of exemptions that exist under specific development permit areas. I believe that and maybe Mr. Rogers, you can chime in if you recall more correctly, but our development permit areas do allow for certain exemptions for certain scales of development. So for example, I believe single family dwellings I think single family dwellings, for example, within a downtown development permit area, which is intended to control form and character, is already exempt. But I think to your point, through the course of developing these proposed bylaw amendments, I think any impact of form and character definitely will need to be considered. Knowing also that the intent is to sort of streamline the improve the ability to build additional dwelling units. But I think form and character consideration moving forward as well.
I'm supportive of the principles that we're moving towards it, but there's some community values there to balance it.
Certainly, and I think any proposed bylaw amendments can still go through the regular improvements process, and there will be additional opportunities to provide feedback on implications related.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Thank you, Alex, for your report and the information contained. Similar to Councillor McMaster's questions surrounding what we would refer to as tertiary units on those ADUs in those more rural zones. There, I'm curious, is that contemplation? I know in terms of the alignment with the OCP and stuff, there are some considerations there, but we have long talked about that the ability for those tertiary type dwellings specific to either a long-term rental situation on those types of properties. Is that a consideration that has been brought forward at all?
Because we wanted to align with the OCP as much as possible. Also to sort of avoid the sort of prolonged OCP amendment process. We only have contemplated increasing density within the village containment area and not outside.
And a follow-up question. And thank you. And then it is something that does concern me, but we can talk about that later. And then the other end of it was those financial incentives that have been brought forward. And just for clarification, that's a time-limited offer in essence. So I'm curious as to the timing around that. So we know how long developments do take, and through that process, that program and that funding for those incentives are once a project is underway, then or completed, it would then have that 3-year, whatever you want to call it, exemption from property tax, et cetera, et cetera. Is that the gist of what?
Yeah, I think so. And at this stage, we're still fairly early in the design of what those financial incentives might look like. After this meeting, we're going to have additional conversations with the district finance folks along with the consultant to really refine what that might look like and the duration and term of those financial incentives. So at this stage, I don't really have a detailed answer for you, but the general intent would be, ideally, what's being thrown around right now is a 3-year term on the issuance of a building permit.
So until the money runs out.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Councillor Thomas?
My question's related to the provincial plans that they're going to give us that are kind of ready to build. Is there any consideration of taking the plans that we feel would work for Tofino and then adapting them in some way for water catchment? Because I just think about this going hand in hand with our limits to growth and our concerns about water, and where we want to prioritize people that might want to incorporate rain catchment or things of that nature. And if we give them a ready to build plan that's set, then that disincentivizes trying to meet some of our other goals.
Yeah, I think having not seen the provincial plans at this point, I can't really comment in too much detail, but I think once we do see them, a recommendation will be to see whether there are ways to sort of tweak them to more appropriate Tofino context. which may address some concerns you raised.
Counselor Sawyer?
I think Mayor Law had his hand up and then I could go after.
Okay, sure, I'm just going down the table, but sure, Mayor Law?
Thank you. Just got a couple questions. One, maybe first a little comment. I do agree with Councillor Anderson about form and character. I think Tofino is a beautiful town and a beautiful spot, and that's why people come here and why we like it so much. And so I think with the density, I think you know, keeping a very close eye on form and character would be important to me going forward, and maybe even a review of our design and review policy. But here's a question for you: is the 3-story ADU? And just refresh my memory. Is that different than the existing height restrictions for single-family homes? Is that the total height is 3 stories, or just maybe give me some numbers on that? That'd be great. And then I have a question.
Sure, thanks for the question, Mayor Law. I think the way that the height maximums are written right now is for accessory dwelling units, it's a maximum of 2 stories, or I think it's 10.8 meters or 10.3 meters. So the recommendation here is not to increase the maximum height of 10.8 meters, but rather remove that maximum 2-story limitation. Because I think through dialogue with the building community, it's potentially feasible to build 3 stories within the existing 10.8 or 10.3 meter maximum height. So I think, just to summarize, I think the intent is not to create accessory dwelling units that are towering over and above the existing maximum building heights as written in the bylaw right now, but rather just enable a little more design flexibility to have an additional story within that existing maximum.
Sure. Thanks for that. I do have 2 more questions, if that's all right. One is very brief, and that is, and it's also about the village containment area being targeted. I understand that the OCP does really focus on limiting growth and densification to that area. Was there also, if I remember correctly, an issue with the cost of infrastructure for the peninsula lands, and was that also a factor in keeping the focus and densification in the downtown?
Thank you, Mayor Law, for the question. I can't actually speak to the specifics of that. I don't know if maybe Mr. Rogers, you can speak to that.
Sure, thanks. Through the chair, Mayor Law, can you just repeat that question? You asked about the peninsula.
Perhaps it was I recall from previous times that the steering away from densification in the peninsula lands, etc., also had a factor, was also factored, or the decisions was affected by the cost or complexity of infrastructure for that area. So it's water delivery, a low pressure zone, sewer, etc. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was just a question.
Yeah, no, thanks. And through the chair, that's right. A lot of the reason that development is set for the village containment area is because we have infrastructure challenges outside of town. So, for example, the water master plan is built up the OCP and doesn't foresee a lot of improvements out there. So density is in the downtown core because we don't want to deal with density outside. It also relates back to Tofino's history, where that area, basically South Industrial Way, was kind of ex-urban, suburban, a water district. So it was more of a rural part, and there were separate communities until 1982. And so there's just how those 2 areas have grown differently. The village has been always a bit more of a village and contained, and then the south area. So I think, I don't know if that helps with that part. I would also say that the village containment area has been in place for previous OCP. As far back, 2012 OCP, and I almost want to say the 2001 OCP. So the village containment area has been in place for over 10 years for sure. And it was something that, for the same reasons we had, that it's outside there now.
Thanks. Yeah, that just clarifies what I thought. I just wanted to get clarified. And if I may have one more question, and then I will stop. Is if the you know, if this goes ahead, I do like the plan. Is there going to be protections? You know, we're looking at densification of the downtown for more housing. Is there going to be protections from, say, some of these loosening of restrictions and loosening of height restrictions, etc.? Is there going to be protections from monster homes, you know, that we've seen elsewhere in the province being built that actually house few people? Maybe that's a little too restrictive, but they just happened elsewhere, and I wonder if how would the policy maybe ensure that the changes do result in more housing and not just larger and more elaborate, more expensive housing?
Yeah, thanks again, Mayor Law, for the question. I think, you know, having not drafted a bylaw with specifics in it, it's I haven't put that much thought into it at this point, but you know, I think I would always refer back to the intent of the program, which is to incentivize very specific types and forms of dwelling units here, and that includes you know, accessory dwelling units, purpose-built rentals, and multifamily sort of medium density forms, along with below market rental dwelling units. So those are our guiding parameters, and any zoning bylaws or any bylaw amendments that we craft would be intended to achieve those goals, and certainly not any you know, I guess traditional low density single family dwellings that would ultimately not be affordable and not achieve the overall objectives of the fund. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but
It's okay. Yep, it's great. Thanks so much. I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you. And did you have a question, Councillor Steele?
I did, yeah, thank you. I just had a few comments on some of those changes or recommendations. I personally understand the need for flexibility. However, I would be not in favor of seeing front and rear setbacks across the board reduced. I feel that a lot of our roads are narrow and our sidewalks are non-existent or old. And if we allow buildings to move closer to the edges of their lots, we'll be losing line of sight in intersections and along roadways, many of which are not straight. And people really rely on that little bit of extra room to see cars coming or kids on bikes. That's just my feedback.
Were there any other questions or comments? Okay, I just had a couple. My question was a little bit similar to Councillor Steers about the waivers, the property tax waiver. So would the district be facing a loss of income because there would be no property tax collected off these properties for 3 years?
no, so I think the intent of the program design is to really use the half grant funding to supplement that money that we would otherwise be losing. And that's why by necessity the program is finite in duration. It will basically stop and run out once we run out of the grant funds that we're receiving.
Okay, thank you. And then my other one was kind of similar to Councillor Sawyer's, was the loss of, or the reduction of the front and rear setbacks and how that can limit green space on a property. And so that was just more of a comment for sure. And that was it for me. So did someone want to read this motion?
I can move that the report titled Interim Update on the Housing Incentive and Accessory Dwelling Unit Enhancement Program dated August 6, 2024 be received for information.
Recognized by Councillor Thomas. All in favor? Motion is carried. And moving on to agenda item 10.3. 2024-20 2034 Community Works Fund Agreement for report from corporate services.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Laura Morehouse. I'm the Manager of Financial Services. I just have a brief presentation regarding the 2024 to 2034 Community Works Fund Agreement. So just a little bit of background and context. The Community Works Fund is one of 3 distinct programs within the Canada Community Building Fund. And this is a program the district has been a part of since its inception in 2005. It's previously been known as the gas tax fund, so something many of you may already be familiar with. This is a federal transfer program that's administered through the Union of BC Municipalities. The mandate of this program is to provide long-term predictable funding to local governments in BC, specifically related to community infrastructure and assets. So the Community Works Fund is not something that we apply for on a project basis. So by entering into the agreement, we would be receiving an annual allocation of funds, and these funds can be invested across a wide range of eligible categories, and we have the flexibility to determine that through the financial planning process. Recipients of these funds are required to submit annual reporting, and the funding that we would receive on an annual basis is calculated on a per capita allocation. So funds can be used for projects within 23 capital and capacity building categories, and as I mentioned, this really is focused on tangible capital assets. And some of the categories are listed up here on the screen: active transportation, drinking water, wastewater, recreation and sport infrastructure, fire halls and fire trucks, and capacity building. And that includes projects related to asset management, long-term infrastructure plans, and integrated community sustainability plans. Within the agreement, there are also outlines within these categories eligible and ineligible expenditures. So it's not just that we can do anything we want for a specific project, but they have specific criteria of what we can and cannot spend. So as it would relate to the District of Tofino's allocation, the table up here shows what the base amount would be in the first 3 years, and then it increases again in years 3 to 5. The per capita amount is calculated based on the 2021 census. And so in years 1 to 3, our annual allocation would be just under $178,000. And then in years 3 to 5, it would increase to $185,000. And just for some comparisons, the 2023 amount that the district received was just under $150,000. And at the time of our December 31 audited financial statements, the balance in our reserve was $1.1 million. So within this new agreement, there have been some changes. The first relates to the investment categories. So some have just changed in name and scope, and others have been added. So for example, the disaster mitigation category is now referred to as the resilience category. It includes more planning for communities. The fire hall category now includes fire truck purchases as standalone projects. And feasibility studies and detailed design projects are now eligible as standalone projects. So that is definitely one of the biggest changes within this new agreement. And housing planning is now eligible under capacity building. So as I mentioned, within these categories, there are eligible and ineligible expenses. And largely the eligible expenditures relate to planning, acquiring, construction of new assets, or rehabilitating existing assets. But the biggest change we've seen in relation to this is that now debt financing related to those specific assets is included as an eligible expense. Secondly, there have been changes to the reporting requirements. Recipients will still be required to submit reporting annually related to specific project information, financial information about the fund, and any communication efforts. But now they are increasing the reporting requirements to include geolocation information for the projects, and more reporting related to standardized metrics, things like meters of road or increase in storage capacity. And this is in line with the fact that this really is an outcomes-based funding source. The last change in the new agreement is related to the spending timeline. So they've now put a cap on how long municipalities or local governments will have to spend the money. So funds received in a given year will need to be spent within 5 years. And any funds that have been received under the previous agreement will now be required to be spent in by 2028. So there are exceptions that can be made to this in consultation with UBCM for projects that have been outlined in long-term financial plans or asset management plans on a case-by-case basis. So in order for the district to enter into this new agreement, UBCM does require that they receive a resolution from council that the mayor and corporate officer are authorized to sign the agreement on behalf of the District of Tofino. But before we get to that, I'll just pause in case there's any comments or questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the, Laura. I appreciate that. The gas tax has always been a fun one. I think you alluded to, well, I know the regional districts were super happy about the fire truck because they're very expensive pieces of equipment. So that was a huge one. In terms of the debt financing, I think you quickly alluded to that. That is for all capital projects that we would be able to utilize it in a debt financing situation?
Absolutely. So if the municipality or local government needed to incur debt in addition to the funding that the community or the funding would provide for a specific project, then debt servicing and debt financing would be an included project for that specific asset. So it would need to be a project identified through the fund.
And a follow-up on that. So existing projects, AKA the wastewater treatment as an example, would be an eligible debt financing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question is, how does that, the spending terms guidelines now in the 5 years, and I had a little note, how will that affect our budget moving forward? So we're going to have to be going back to those allocations of funds. We have a 5-year time by 2028. That's well, that's a little bit of pressure in a good way, but how does one go about doing that?
Question. So the allocation of funds is something that will be revisited through the financial planning process, which is now underway for the next iteration of our 5-year financial plan. We currently, in our adopted financial plan, have these funds allocated to begin being spent on debt servicing for the wastewater treatment plant as of 2026, and that's largely related to stacking rules to the existing grant funding that we're already receiving. I don't have too much information on what that's going to look like moving forward because we haven't quite got there yet with the new financial planning process. But given that we are able to apply for an exemption, so to speak, through UBCM to spend the funds outside of those 5 years, likely that will be something that staff will be looking at.
Thank you. That's what I was hoping to hear. Yeah.
Councilor Anderson?
I'm just wondering about the per capita portion of the funding. Is that based on the census or?
Thank you for the question.
Because I believe we have a shadow population.
It is. It's this
a seasonal population.
This current agreement is based on the 2021 census.
Any other questions? No.
I'll move the recommendation. I'll move that the mayor and corporate officer be authorised to sign the 2024 to 2034 Community Works Fund Agreement on behalf of the District of Tofino.
Second.
Second by Councilor Anderson. All in favor? Okay, moving on to business initiated by council members. Councilor Sawyer?
Yes, at the last DIRL executive committee, the business case for the Tofino branch was brought before executives and it passed the audit committee as well. So it will now be discussed at the general board meeting in September, which is very exciting news, prospect to the new library branch. And if anyone wants to tune in, it will be available on Zoom. And it can sometimes be more interesting than you think.
Any other new business? Seeing none, we'll move on to question period.
Thank you, Chair Sloman. I will now make a call to the public for questions. There is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to ask a question, you can do so now using the Q&A function. You will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a call, calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times. There are no questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. And then I will move us into close. I will move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91A(c) and 92B of the community charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or other position appointed by the municipality, labor relations or other employee relations, or the consideration of information received and held in confidence related to negotiations between the municipality and the provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party. Okay. You're enclosed.